Hi, I'm Michelle Foreman, and I will be teaching you 3.6 quadratic regression. So to start, when you have a list with more than 3 points, this is an example of a list with 4 more points, you will need to use quadratic regression, which is a function of the calculator to find a graphing model. So the steps, you will need to start by pressing Stat on your calculator, which would be pressing Stat, which is right here on your calculator, which leads to this page where you press Edit and then 1, which leads you to this menu, which is L1 and L2, where you will be entering your X list into L1 and Y into the L2 list. Then you're going to press Window, which is right here, and adjust the X minimum to be smaller than the smallest X value, and the X max to be bigger than the biggest X value, and the same with the Y values, with X minimum, the Y minimum being smaller than the smallest Y, and vice versa. Then you will press second, and then Y equals, or stat plot. Then press Enter on the first one, the first example, and make sure that it is on. So that'll look like this. So press Enter on the very first one. This only shows 2 through 5, but there's the first one. And make sure that it's on. So press On, and also type. Make sure that your type is the stat plot graph. Press Enter, and then you can exit by pressing second mode, which is second quit. And then you can press Graph, and you will see the points plotted like this. After that, you can press second and then 0 or catalog, which is second and then 0 or catalog. Then this screen will show up, and you can scroll down until you hit diagnostic on. Press Enter, and it will show you how it's done. Then you will press Stat again. So you'll be pressing Stat right here again, and then press the right arrow to Calc, and then you'll be pressing 5 for quadratic regression. Then you will see this with Y, A, B, C, and R squared. After completing step 5, press the Y equals button. So that would be pressing this button, and you will see this screen. Make sure there are no other numbers in here. If not, you can clear them if there are any. Then you will press the bars button, which stands for variables, right here, bars button on your calculator, and this button will come up. You're going to press 5 for statistics, and then you will arrow over twice until you find the EQ. Then you will press Enter. This puts your equation into that Y equals right here. And then you're going to press Graph, and it should look like this with your points and the graph going through them, which will help you graph later. Okay. Example 1. Okay, so this example tells us the X and the Y. Okay, so to start, we would enter the numbers into the L1, which is the X, and the L2, which is the Y. And then we would change the window like we did earlier to be the biggest X value. As for this one in particular, we would change the X maximum to be about 7 or 6, and the X minimum to be -1, because you still want those 0, 0 origin points in there. And then you would want the largest Y value to be around 17, so higher than 15, and then the minimum Y value to be still probably -1 to keep it in line with that X. Then since you already did steps 3 and 4, they should already be turned on your calculator, so those should not change unless you clear your calculator. So don't clear your calculator in between problems. Okay, so on to step 5. Press Stat again, like earlier, and press the right arrow, and then press 5 for quadratic regression. Okay, so stat, right arrow, press 5 for quadratic regression. This should pop up. The only reason we do step 6, which is the vars, is because no one wants to retype all this into the y equals. But if we do the vars, it should plot it for you, which makes everything easier in the long run. Moving on to example 2. Let's use this example from the very first slide. To start, we should clear the previous numbers and enter these numbers into L1 and L2, with day being the x and height being the y. Then we should change the window like we have done in the previous problems, with the x being minimum x being smaller than 1, max being 12, bigger than, less than 1, and so on. Then skipping 4 and 3 again, going straight on to step 5, we would press stat again, and then press the right arrow, and press 5 for quadratic regression, and again that gives you y, a, b, and c, and if you still have 3 and 4 on, it should give you y squared as well. Then again, instead of retyping everything into the y squared, you should press enter on the EQ, making sure that there's nothing left in your y squared from earlier, and then press graph, and it should be plotted. Okay, so since we're done with the x value and the whole stat, when we have that, you can go for the easier route, since this particular equation does have a very long a, b, and c. So I would probably just go to the vars button and press 5 and then arrow twice over. But before, you have to make sure that y equals is clear before you press graph. And then it should be plotted after that. Okay, on to example 3. So taking x, plot that into L1, and y, plot this into L2. Then change the window to have the x value as bigger than the biggest x value, and the x minimum to be smaller than x minimum, y max to be bigger than largest y value, and the same with the smallest y value. So you should press stat again, and then press the right arrow, then press 5 again for quadratic regression. Press enter, should have y, a, b, and c. And if you're still on the steps 3 and 4, you should still have the r squared. Then by pressing the vars button on your calculator, then 5, then arrow over twice for EQ. Again, make sure that your y equals is clear. Check this every time. Then put your equation into the y equals, and then you press graph, and this should be plotted right on the graph. Okay, example 4. Again, take this x, put it into L1, y, put it into L2, then change the window for this specific equation. If you leave the window, then nothing is going to be right, and it's not going to come out right. Again, press stat, and then press the right arrow, and press 5 to get quadratic regression. Press enter, should have y, a, b, c, and if, again, r squared. Then press the vars button on your calculator and press 5 for statistics, then arrow over twice for EQ, then press enter. This puts your equation into the y equals, and then press graph, and then it's plotted. Okay. How to answer questions over these graphs. So different questions in different worksheets that you may have in the future. So if there's a question about it being linear or quadratic, then you can go back to the stat and arrow over to calc, then press 4, which gives you linear regression, and since you have the r squared on it, it should give you the number, and whichever one closer to 1 will be the answer to that question. So if it's like 0.99 or 0.98, whichever one has the closest number to 1, which would be 0.99 in that situation, would be the answer to that question. Okay, so given y, or given x, find y. So to do this, you would press second graph, then look at the table to find the row with the given x value. Or, this would probably be easier, press second trace, and then 1, enter on 1, would prompted, and then when we go back to the graph, when prompted with x, enter the given x value. So another one would be given y, find x. So you would press y equals, then move to y2 equals, and enter the given y value, and change the window to see the y value line. Then press graph, then press second trace 5, intersect, enter. Then your intersection point is found when it will give you the x value when given a y value. Okay, so when asking for independent and dependent variables, the independent variable is always the x and the dependent variable is always the y. To find the domain, the lowest x point goes in the box and the infinity goes on the other side, or the highest point on that y, like line or axis. And in range, same thing, lowest y goes in the left side, and then the highest point on the y-axis goes on the right side, or the number, so the positive number, or infinity. Okay, so when predicting a random answer that they want you to find, you would see if they were asking for the x or y, so the independent or the dependent variable, and then plug in which variable they gave you to solve the missing one, and just plug it into your calculator in the equation that you got from the stat calc 5 in that equation, and then that would help you find the missing number. Okay, I will probably post the Prezi as well, so if you have any other questions, you can pause the video and do. Thank you for listening.